All right. So I want to start by making three little distinctions. I believe that they are important between negative peace, positive peace, and a culture of peace. Now, maybe some of you have heard already about negative peace, which the basic core of this idea is that what you need to do is to try to put in place something that will prevent real physical violence to happen. And once you have this, basically you have peace. So you will have high-level negotiation in a country in civil war, and you will sign an agreement, you will implement that agreement, you will have demilitarization, for instance, and magically, boom, you have peace. So this is a little bit oversimplifying, but basically this is the idea. Now there's something that's been developed in, I think, the past 20 years, which is positive peace. And the idea is that it's not sufficient to only stop people from fighting, but what you need is to address the substance of the conflict. What you need to address are the indirect and structural violence that can be still present. So we can think here about all kind of conflict, whether it's political, economical, ideological divide. And what you will try to do is through tools, really development tools, rule of law, etc. You will try to actually tackle this. And this is where all the development stuff come in. And then there is culture of peace, which I think for me is just a step again forward. And the idea is that the problem is not the conflict itself. It's not the substance of it, neither. It's really the way we choose to deal with conflict. Now the idea of a culture of peace is that you will always try to face conflict and to transform it in a positive way, because conflict is potential. Now when I mean conflict, I don't mean the fact that I'm super happy that people are fighting at each other. What I mean is that conflict is really something that is part of everyday life. It's part of a social relation we have every time we have divergence of view. So if you approach peace and culture of peace by the idea that what you want is to suppress conflict, then you're not going anywhere. Because conflict really is potential. For instance, if I'm angry at you, like you stole my chocolate. And what I'm gonna do then is just to be angry inside and not tell you anything, and you will just eat the chocolate, and it'll be just like, not showing anything. How can we know there is a problem? Inside I will feel pain maybe, or I will be angry, there's strong feelings that are there. But if I don't express them, then you have no way whatsoever to know that you caused me this pain. So this is why conflict is a positive thing, because you can actually express what you're feeling and offer an opportunity to tackle the problem. Now, peace has to do with the kind of social relations that we have as individuals. And I think when we talk about a culture of peace, we need to really define what we mean by culture itself. Now, culture is much more fundamental than the country you're from, the language you speak, or the kind of traditional music you listen to. Culture has really to do with the kind of mindset that you have, the psychological makeup, the lenses that you use to look at the world, and the behavior that you use actually to interact with others. Now culture is very visible, and the best way to see it is to try changing it. Culture will be the kind of framework that will actually allow you to interact with others. And if you try to change that framework, you will see reaction immediately. This is why culture is so important to build peace. For instance, if you try, I'm with my best friends, and then instantly I decide to talk to them not as my best friend, but as very old people. I change the kind of respect I am giving them. And they will look at me and say, "What are you doing, man?" They will immediately see it. So if you change this culture that we live in, then you can actually react, you can create reaction. So this is really important. Now culture on the other hand, it can be a culture of peace which will foster the connection with others, the way to actually transform continuously conflict as they arise, but it can also be a culture of violence. And a tragic example that we hear over and over again is the Israelo-Palestinian conflict. To me, there is a lot of substance in this conflict. There is indeed problems of borders, there's a problem of economic access, of wealth disparities. But if you tackle all of these, if you fix these in a way, with development techniques, but you don't change the culture that is sustaining the division between these people, that is pushing them apart, you will never have peace. Because human beings are perfect to invent new ways to fight if they don't feel that they need to connect with each other. Now I will try to talk also, I mean, if you look, like this is a tragic example, right? Everybody knows about this big conflict, but when I mean about culture of violence and culture of fear, it's always here also. If you look at Switzerland right now, it's the very same mindset, but expressed in a different way, less tragically. For instance, if I had to make a little bit of different alternatives, you could have the idea of opposition versus the idea of transcendence, which is a culture of peace. Now, there's simple things such as the idea of propriety. And as opposed to this, in the culture of peace, you have the idea of belonging. You have a very strong idea that is present in our society, which is the idea of rights, my rights versus your duty, or my rights versus your right. But then if you accept the culture of peace, you will not work with rights, but with empathy, with the recognition of what the other is bringing to you. And now you have another example, which is the idea that you merit something, that you deserve it. And in a culture of peace, that will not be expressed that way, but that it will be expressed to gratitude. Because you're bringing something, then you receive gratitude from others, instead of meriting it. Not so agree? We'll talk about it later. Yeah? You want to say something?
No, could you maybe say that one more time?
Okay.
There were a lot of different terms.
Yeah. So let's take some examples, you know. I will do something, like I'm in the kitchen, we are 6 sharing this kitchen, and I will just tidy up everything on my own at 11 p.m. Everybody's happy with this, yeah. And then when people come back, I have two types of reaction, and I've seen this already. And it creates totally different connection with others. If when they come back in that kitchen in the morning, I'm like, so guys, you see what I've been doing? Now can I get some merit back? Can you say thank you? I will get maybe the thank you, and I'll feel like, oh yeah, they earned it. They saw that I merit this, that I did this work. But then if I actually say, you know guys, for me this kitchen is really important, and I wanted to give this to you, they will feel gratitude. And it will stay. It's much more powerful than actually asking others to recognize what you merit. And this is exactly here, there's a change of culture. There's a change of the way we behave with others and the way we expect others to react also. So now about a culture of violence. A culture of violence and of fear, for me, it's a set of value, norms, and behavior. Now, a culture of peace, on the other hand, is one of diversity, empathic relations, a desire for inclusive decision-making processes, and tools and spaces to transform conflict. Now, more often than not, in the world that we see right now, we hear this dichotomy that I've just mentioned between your rights and my rights. But I would like to ask you to start a reflection right here, and I would like to ask you to write it down, because it's a really important question that can bring up a lot of things in you, which is, would you rather be right or be happy? And we'll talk about this later in the discussion, but I don't believe you can be both. So now if you look at our current political system, how do we take decisions together? How do we decide to live all together? We have all accepted the fact that there is a majority that will be, the decision will be taken by majority. But even in my own student residence, you know, I live in a student residence actually with my dear friend right there. And what happens is that we were a group of 7 and he was part of this. And we were deciding how we were going to take decision together as a students committee, you know, as residence committee. And we come up with 2 solutions, which is majority or consensus. And one of the members of this committee said, well, you know, I think we should really take majority because, I mean, consensus is going to take too much time, it's too much effort, it's not really going to work. What is behind these words? It's fear, okay? It's fear of failing to find a solution altogether, even though we were only 7. So, what I want to say by this is that this culture of fear and this culture of violence is very much present in all of us. It guides the decision that we take. And this is why developing a culture of peace is so important, because it would help us to develop new solutions to the one we already have. Now, in that very same student residence, in the same committee, someone brought up the idea that maybe one of this member of this committee will do something bad, you know, will not clean up after this mess or organize a party without respecting anything. And then one of the members said, well, you know, we should find ways to punish the person that is not behaving right. And I was like, are you out of your mind? Do you like to be punished? Who likes to be punished? Is there anybody doing this when I say I like to be punished? No one likes to be punished. So why do we keep thinking that punishment is the solution? Let me tell you this straight, punishment is never going to work because it really separates us from our capacity to do well in the future. If I'm punished, I don't want to repair what I've been doing. And I actually maybe don't want to stop doing it in the future because I've suffered from it. So basically the idea of punishment is that you cause pain, and the way to repair pain is to causing you pain. There's a problem of logic in there. So this is the kind of culture of violence that we live in, and a culture of fear that doesn't allow us to think of alternatives.
I have a question. So is punishment an obstacle, just unconstructive, or is it decaying the process of peace?
So actually, I think punishment is decaying the process of peace because it doesn't allow us then to walk toward the other.
Right.
If I'm punished, I don't have the energy in me to just go to you and say, well, you know, you punished me, I did bad, God, you're right, I'm going to do so much better in the future, and I'm going to work with you. No, I'm punished, I don't like you. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's a classic reaction, we protect ourselves. And actually, punishment, if I just talked about muscles for a culture of peace, punishment is not something we need to work on. We don't need to develop our capacity to punish others, you know. But we need, though, to develop our capacity to imagine, to be creative, and to have a capacity to walk toward conflict. These are things that we really need to work on. Now, by talking about walking and constructing, promoting a culture of peace, you have to realize that you're going against the current culture, right? And because of that, you have to expect reaction, and you have to expect opposition. You have to expect to be called a dreamer, and this is something that happens to me quite some time. But now, idealism is too often mocked, and realism because actually just the excuse for the capitulation to the inability to fight what is not good in this world, what we really don't like. And that would be the economic system, that would be the way the politicians are behaving, that would be the fact that states go to war, and that the fact that we put bad people in prison. Because it's the way it is, then you cannot change it. And if you actually want to change this, then people will tell you, well, it's impractical or it's not realistic. Realism has no time for dreamer and no time for evolution, actually. But if you take dream out of your process of thinking, then you're really left with almost nothing. The absence of utopian ideas leaves us without a clear ideological and moral center. And therefore we face a void in which politics is totally deprived of its liberty capacity. And we are only left what is possible right here and right now. And I think this comment is very important for the UN. And for GIMUN especially. Because you will see that that's really the kind of decision that is taken by politicians right now. What is possible right here, right now to get re-elected. And if you're unhappy with the way the world is, and I think most of us will be okay with saying there is something that is going wrong, you know. Well, you need really to challenge the way we take decisions together and the way we live. And that is the culture. So now, for me, the greatest challenge you will face when you will leave this room is to believe that promoting a culture of peace is not possible. Because you will face reaction, but don't let that stop you. And use imagination to go beyond that. It may sound like a little bit classic, but really, think of the fact that you didn't know it was impossible, so you tried to do it. And maybe you will succeed, actually. And this is what I mean by walking toward conflict, but I will elaborate on this. Now, I want to clarify that no one is to blame for the culture of violence or the culture of fear we live in. I mean, the tools and structures of the culture of peace are not present. If you look at the structures that we have right now, the school, the prisons, the family, if you look at the way we behave in these spaces, it's not working in the culture of peace. It's not something that has been developed. So it's not surprising that we live in that culture. But violence for me is not morally wrong. It's just the expression of an inability to be creative. An inability, a default of creativity. And it's simply sad. It's really just sad. Now, violence is a tragic expression of unmet needs. And if you use the lenses of a culture of peace, you will see that there is no other to fight. There is really no opposition. There is no enemy in a culture of peace. If I say, you're acting violently, so you're bad, what am I creating? Just more pain. It's not constructive. Now, if you want to be constructive, you have to use imagination. You have to walk toward the one that is causing you pain. And this is hard, but we'll see that there is some tools. Now, if you look at the study that we have, for instance, here at the Graduate Institute, I have a specialization on peace building. And it's really funny for me to realize that actually I'm not really learning about peace, I'm much more learning about violence. We don't have classes that teach us how community can work. We don't have classes that teach us how to connect with others that are so different from us. It's not something that we know for the moment. It's not something that we develop. I think some people know, but they're not in these big universities. Now, I think a culture of peace is needed everywhere because it doesn't exist anywhere. And I would like to ask you to just reflect a little on your own country, on your own community, on your own group of friends, or even your family. Your family is very important. And if you look at these spaces, do you see them as working with the culture of peace that I just mentioned? Do you see them as spaces in your own family? Do you see this family as a space where conflict is addressed immediately as it happened and transformed creatively? Or do you see more often just scream pain, unhealed relations, and even sometimes rupture? Now, to me, all this it's sad, really, because we have the capacity to do something else. And more often now, this is what I see mostly with my friends, is that when there is conflict, they try to avoid it, just the way I described it before. And this is so not productive. You just keep yourself, you just keep the pain that you have, and you don't express it, and you don't create anything new. Now, what I wanted to say is that I've experienced, because I've been really into nonviolent communication, which is one of the tools that I would like to explain to you later on. But when you teach these tools, which is basically the idea that people can express themselves using needs and feelings, they get rid of judgment. The other is never bad. It's never morally wrong. You have to get rid of this idea. Even though somewhere in your head you think, well, that's bad, you killed someone. But in order to reconstruct the link, you need to get rid of this and only try to understand what were the needs that were behind this action, because this is really what is driving all of us at any time. So once you do this, and when I teach these to my friends and they go back in their family, they're like, wow, I never realized there was such a level of violence in my own family, in my own group of friends also. They will see shaming, they will see blaming, they will see simple stuff, such as the fact that you will try to eat as much food before the other eat, or you try to keep as much candy as you can because you don't really feel the interest of sharing with others. Now, even here at a more higher level, I see so many examples of a lack of dialogue that we have in our society. How many people need to go see a psychologist because they have no one to talk to? Because they couldn't find ways really be creative enough to express themselves to their siblings or their parents, Now, what do we see on the news or on the advertisement? Do you often hear good news on CNN, Fox News, even worse? How often do you hear about communities that work? How often do you hear about the happiness that is created through sharing and caring for others freely? Is this something advertising really promotes? I don't think so. So, you will see that I link culture of peace with the kind of economic system that we live in, which I believe is really separating us from our capacity to share and to care for others. And it makes us believe that the creation of happiness can be through consumption, instead of indeed gift and solidarity. Now, I believe they are really mutually exclusive, and this is why it's important for you to understand that about culture of peace, is that you cannot be arguing for a culture of peace and being okay with the rest, saying, I'm just promoting a culture of peace, but I don't want to change the rest of the world, I don't want to change how politicians are acting, I'm just, culture of peace. Because they are mutually exclusive. You cannot live in a culture of peace and keep the economic system that we live in, for the reason I will explain. I believe that the bubble of wealth that has been created around the 1%, you've heard about this 99% again, the 1%, well, it's really just a way to compensate with what has been lost. And what has been lost is the loss of community, the loss of intimacy, the loss of connection, and most importantly, the loss of meaning. So many people are actually studying in this graduate institute where I am, and are just going on with their life without actually thinking what kind of meaning they want to give. What kind of gift they want to give to this world. They're just going on with their life, This is a loss of meaning. Now, everybody wants to live a life of meaning. And in our current economic system, we are taught that we don't depend on anybody. We don't need to know who grow my food. We don't need to know who actually did my clothes, you know. And if I don't like them, I don't care. I just pay them. I don't need to know them. Now, it's very, very hard to build a culture of peace if the underlying logic of the economic system we live in is we don't need each other. Now, joint consumption doesn't create intimacy. Only creativity and gifts create intimacy and connection. I believe the social bonds have to be reconstructed. We have to start on a new basis. But this is possible at your very own level, because the moment you change the logic, it will be immediately visible. The moment you go against the culture we live in, it will be immediately visible, and you will create reaction. And this is what I've experienced personally. Now, to promote and transform the system, what we need most importantly is to learn. And this is really the ability I want you to develop. You need to learn, because changing a culture takes time. It's not easy, it's messy. Peace is not linear. Peace is complicated, okay? Living with others, it's so complicated. We all have different ways to express our needs. We all have different ways to behave with others. Now, because of this, we need always to adapt the tools that we use, and we need to learn them. And it's really also scary to be nonviolent in a violent context. There is actually people dying trying to use nonviolent when they face a violent conflict. There is a risk there, but it takes so much more courage to face non-violently a conflict than to go with your weapons. Now, practically speaking, I believe the promotion of peace requires two things, which is, on top of learning and being creative, is spaces and tools. Why spaces? And by spaces, I mean really infrastructures for peace that will sustain the change of culture. Because we currently have structures that maintain a culture of violence and a culture of fear. We currently have the role of the media, the role of the state in itself. And if we want to change that culture, we need to build our own structures also that will facilitate a continuous learning, that will teach us actually the tools. Now, the tools are nonviolent communication, restorative justice system, conflict transformation, and problem-solving mechanism. All these are things that we can actually learn. And once we've learned it, we can make the change, actually bring what is our gift. I think we, as youth, have the creativity needed to imagine new structures, to imagine new tools, to imagine new forms of behavior, new norms. And we should own that ability. Because what we have been hearing repeatedly is that youth are the future, you know? And if you think that, then you're like, well, I have this in the future, so why not use it now? But if you sit on it, if you don't use it, you will lose it, okay? So own that ability, walk toward conflict, be pioneer of change. Youth have a big role to play here, because imagining, thinking outside the box is so much more easier for us than for other people. It's so much easier for us to take this risk. It's so easier for us to believe in something, to be dreaming about something, to construct this value system. This is really when we're young that we build this value system. Now, I don't say that old people have nothing of this. I see some old people who actually have this, but they build it continuously. And this is exactly what I mean by not sitting on it. If you sit on it, you will lose it. Now, as I said, I hear repeatedly that youth are the future, and I think you've heard about this too, and this is basically maybe one of the ideas why you are still here. And lately, last week actually in the conference, I heard about the fact that youth are the partners of today, and that we need to build a beautiful framework in which youth will be active in peace building. And I say, well, that's really nice. You basically want to construct another box in which I have to think. And I don't think we should wait for that framework. I think we can really find ways, much more innovative than what they will come up with, to act. Let's own this. Let's actually do something. Now, I want to give you two examples of something that I've been part of, which are very concrete. The first thing is actually this conference, Nesting Peace. Now, Nesting Peace was a magical moment, and for many reasons, and actually my friend here was present. But Nesting Peace was a moment when we had 150 participants coming all together from all over the world, applying continuously the gift economy. There were no fee, no participation fee to this conference. Everything was given forward, and we received back so much in gratitude. Now, on a daily basis, we use nonviolent communication. We use restorative justice system because there were conflict arising. And what we taught in that conference made really people want to jump on conflict. They wanted to walk toward conflict. They're like, oh, there's a conflict, hell yeah, I want to be part of this, you know. This is the kind of spirit in the culture of peace. And it really makes change because what we had at the end of this conference was a community that was so strong. I've never seen that anywhere. I've never seen that in my family, I've never seen that in my group of friends. But let's be conscious that this was actually a conscious process. We built this space, we used this tool. And actually we used this tool in the preparation of this space. We were a group of 6 young people walking all together, and we decided to only walk when we wanted to, and on the things we wanted to. Really functioning with the energy we had. And we were building on a permanent basis using nonviolent communication to express ourselves. And there was a lot of stress in that. I mean, this is a huge conference. We had no idea how to do it. There were a lot of complicated things that we managed to do, and we managed to do it quite easily because we were really creating a support system with each other and having empathy session at the end of each week. So we consciously created the space by using the tools that we needed in that space. Now, another really simple example, which is maybe will resonate a little bit more with you because, as I said, this conference, we were all together in this idea and we created these tools all together. So maybe in your own environment, you don't have these people that are also supportive of a culture of peace. But you can still do something, and this is the case in my student resident. Basically what happened is that the kitchen and the living room was really messy, okay? It was terrible. Now, the administration came up with this beautiful solution, which was to close the kitchen at 11 p.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. No more mess, no more noise, problem solved, right? Now, it was really about to burst in an open conflict between the resident and the administration. And what we did with a group of friends is that we used that conflict, we really walked toward it. We generated a general assembly, we gathered people. In that general assembly, we decided to form a committee. That committee went to talk with the administration. We expressed our needs, we find creative solutions with the administration in this group of friends. And eventually the kitchen was not closed. But this is not the end of the story. And this is why really walking toward conflict is so important. Is that if using a culture of peace and really walking toward conflict was simply to solve the problem that you have here now, I don't really see the point. Because that requires then you to bring new energy every time you face conflict. But what happened in that conflict is that the community that we created stayed. And it's still organizing party for all the residents. And the kind of community spirit that we created through that conflict wasn't there before. Now my question to you is, what will you do when you go out of the space now? Because a change of culture really requires you to change the way you look at the world. As I say, it's your own psychological makeup. It's your own mindset. And for this, I will actually ask you to use that to look at yourself. Now it's very hard because you will use your head to think about the way your head functions. But if you try to react when you're judging someone, if you try to look at the way you approach diversity, if you try to look at the way you react when you see someone that is acting completely different, then you will find some of the lenses that I mentioned. And if you do that actually for your group of friends or your family, it will be even more easier. Because you will see the dynamic that I just expressed. And if you do that, you will learn. And this is really the ability that is the most important for me. And even if you walk toward conflict and you try to do something when you see a conflict, you will learn so much more. And it won't seem idealistic at all. Actually, it will really seem like the way we should live and the way we can live. But we have been taught, again, repeatedly by the structure we are in, that this is not possible. So let's try to think that it is actually possible. For the example that I just mentioned, I mean, it happened. Now, all this is very hard to do on your own. And in the 2 examples that I just expressed, I wasn't my own. We created the support system. And this is very important. I mean, we all depend on each other. This is really the basic core idea of a culture of peace. Everything is created to support. And you need to seek support if you want to do the change you want to see. And for this, you should not apply the culture of violence to yourself when you're trying to build a culture of peace. And this is also something I've seen so strikingly in most of the conferences on peace building. These people are so not peaceful. You know, they're all building peace, but they're so not peaceful. They're judging them if they fail. Judging themselves, you know, so harsh. I was actually talking to a teacher of nonviolent communication and asking a question about something, and she said, "Oh yeah, I'm so stupid. Oh sorry. Oh, I'm so stupid." I was like, "You're saying sorry. I don't feel sorry about you. It's okay, you know. And you're judging yourself as stupid." So this is exactly the kind of thing that we as youth can change, because these people that I just mentioned, who some of them just came into peace building as something that they do for a job, you know, but it's so less powerful because they do not apply that. And actually, there's many studies that show that peace building really works when the person that is doing it is committed to the kind of structure and space that they want to create. Now, I realized that I was supposed to talk about social media to help actually youth promote a culture of peace, and I have a few things to say about that. But I have to say, first and foremost, that I'm pretty scared of the kind of armchair activism that promotes. Because I believe the idea behind the fact that we should use social media to create a culture of peace is really that youth should use computer in a useful way. But I think we can do much better than this. And if we do that, we actually are not going to create the space and opportunity for us to be creative, imaginative, and to learn. Now, I think youth can bring a much deeper contribution than just using, you know, clicking like and creating pages and sharing some links, you know. But to me, social media is a tool. It's true, it's one solution. There is potential, you know. I mean, there is no barrier to entry. Everybody can create its own content. There are some opportunities here, but you have to realize that social media as it is, and by that I mean the fact that it's instantaneous, most of the time anonymous, that you can choose between sharing videos, articles, or just words. All this is a fixed framework. You can tweet 140 characters. It's already fixed. You cannot change that. So it's already a box in which you're supposed to act, but I think we can really create our own box, or even get rid of this ideal box. And this is what I mean by trying to take a little distance with this. Now, my impression actually of social media for the moment is that we really post things on Facebook, for instance, or on Twitter that are supposed to be sensational news. And then we expect other people to validate our choice in putting that news out by clicking on like, for instance. Or even better, if they comment, wow, like we feel really recognized. But actually, I think this is the behavior of a 7-year-old crying out like saying, "Can someone please acknowledge me?" And this sentence is very important because you realize that through social media, the point of it is actually to create a fictive sense of community. And I really want to emphasize that it is fictive. It leaves you lonelier than before. So let's not be tricked by that. You can share something, you know. So, for instance, how can we actually use social media? Well, you see massive violation of human rights in Syria, and you feel outraged enough to actually share the article. Now that's good. I mean, Stefanessa said beautifully that outrage is really important. I mean, it builds your own value system. It builds your own dream, you know. It makes actually the meaning that you want to see in the world, and it clarifies that. But outrage is never enough. The really necessary next step to outrage is engage. If you just outrage without engaging, I don't really see the point. Maybe you will generate engagement of others, but if you don't promote that yourself, I don't really see the point. And engaging in that kind of, you know, sharing this article will be really create a debate out of it. Really asking others to react, looking for solutions with others on the basis of that thing, creating the space to do that. And actually this is one of the reasons why I created a debate club at the Institute. I use this as an excuse to actually think profoundly about the kind of issues that we want to change. Now, but the way it is made, again, the social media does not really allow you to do that. How often do you see debate on Facebook? Profound discussion, really something that moves you.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah, actually.
But if you look at Facebook, where are the articles? Really the space when you write and you think.
No, I think most of the social media tools, they complement each other. Mm-hmm. So that you will not have everything on one platform. I believe that is actually good, that we spread the engagement a little. You will maybe have a blog, you put the link on Facebook, people will then go to it, they will comment on your wall, and they will tweet about it. Mm-hmm. And I disagree with you. I believe there is a lot of qualified debates, and I think the interesting about social media is that I can debate not at the graduate institutes with all the other grad students, but I can debate with a guy from Kenya.
Yeah.
And that's not possible if you have to meet face to face.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with this. This is really the potential of social media, that you can connect with others that are not there. And I've read the description for this meeting. But then, in my own experience, I've been talking about a lot of things that outraged me on Facebook for a long time. But what really changed my mindset and what allowed me to walk toward conflict was what I was just writing, or the debate I was generating. It was really the fact that I experienced it, that I tried to use my family setting to understand what was going on for dynamics. That I was trying to use my group of friends to create other spaces instead of just the classic relations we had. That I was using my student residence to walk toward conflict and generate other structures, you know. This is really where the learning took place for me. So this is why I really want to emphasize, it's good if we find the way for social media to be a tool to debate, but that's just ideas. It's not engagement. It's not doing something. So debate, construct your energy, you know. If you feel support, like if you share something on Facebook and you're like, I really want to do that because I have this conflict in my family, can someone please help me? And then we think all together of ways you could actually address this conflict, and then you do it. And this is where you really build your own value system. This is where you really build your learning. And this is what is actually missing in all these peace builders. And I know that I would miss that, because out of this graduate institute, I could be a peace builder in a way. I could enter in any big peace building organization and do the work, because I'm qualified for it. But I think the most important quality for peace building and for the promotion of a culture of peace is understanding for yourself and practicing, put it in practice for yourself. So really go out there, face conflict, look at the relations we have with others, and don't postpone your engagement, because we see that the realization of a culture of violence and a culture of peace can be so tragic. I mean, the war on terror was only possible because people were living in fear, and it had dramatic consequences. So we really want to change that. I personally really want to change that. So this is why I'm trying to promote culture of peace, at least in my own environment, and building the strength actually to do it then at a higher level. So this is all I have to say for the moment. Thank you very much for your attention, and we can debate after.